Chapter 16. An Unfriendly Reception. Dave, Blossom, and I reached Su-Lynn's pod site 2 days later. We trekked 2 valleys over and up a small hill until we were looking down on the spot she'd chosen to set up camp in. To give her credit, we didn't see the pod straight away. It was the smoke from the cook fire that gave her away. Guess who's probably got to survival level 1 before any of us, Dave said, his voice filled with pride. Blossom gave his shoulder a friendly shove. Yeah, and who's got to spittin' level 1000 already? David blushed, and I almost felt sorry for him, but Blossom touched his shoulder again, and her touch was gentler than before. Come on, let's go make sure she's all right, okay? I didn't try to stop them when Blossom took the lead and headed down the hill, but I did take the time to scan the surrounding area. There was nothing. I looked again, and when there was still nothing, I followed after them. They only come at night, I reminded myself, although I couldn't think of a single reason why they should. They only come at night. I must have said it loud enough for David to hear because he stopped and looked back at me. It wasn't night when they attacked my camp, he reminded me. It was night when they attacked mine, Blossom said, stopping when she realized that neither Dave nor I were moving. And mine, I said. Dave glared at us both, then marched past Blossom with a determined look on his face. We'd still better hurry, he said, weaving around a couple of bushes and maneuvering around a tall blackbark tree. You never know when they might get here. We hurried, but Su-Lynn wasn't home when we got there. David knocked on the entrance to her pod and I ordered it to open. But it didn't open. What'll we do? Blossom asked, looking at me. I guess we wait, I said, looking around. We should probably get some more firewood. Why? Dave wanted to know. It's not like we're going to stay here the night. I looked at him and then looked pointedly at the sky. I don't think we have much of a choice. But what if they come? Or just blow it up? There's no way we'd survive if those rockets scored a direct hit. Remembering the explosion from his pod and the blazing bonfire that Blossom's home had become, I felt inclined to agree. Well, we can't go anywhere else until Su-Lynn gets back. Why not? She asked, and we all looked around. She was nowhere to be seen, but David didn't let that stop him from replying. Because we're here to rescue you, he said, and Su-Lynn laughed. Well, sure, you could be, she said, and that weak excuse might actually work if I didn't know that Dave and Blossom's pod got blown up a couple of nights ago. We all looked at each other, and I waited for the computer voice to say something. It remained stubbornly silent, but Su-Lynn spoke once more. What? Got nothing to say? She demanded, and that's when I registered that she sounded really, really angry. I guess you'd better leave then, before I blow your scaly tails all to pieces. Before she what? I looked around again, this time more carefully. It took me a couple of minutes before I spotted it, but when I did, it was easy. There were 3 cameras set up around the perimeter of the camp, and a couple of speakers. She was good at science, right? I asked, and Dave nodded. I pointed at the speakers and the cams, waving at the nearest one. I don't suppose you recognize me? I asked, but I didn't wait for an answer. I'm Laurie Canavas. I opened my mouth to explain, but Sue cut right across the top of me. Yeah, sure, I know who you are. You are the biggest troublemaker in history, and I don't know why you, of all people, are going along with the lizards. My mouth dropped open at her words. Go along with the lizards? Man, she didn't know me one little bit. We're here to rescue you before the lizards blow you all to heaven and back. I got to Dave in time and Blossom got herself out. Gave us quite a surprise when we saw her pod burning and she said hello. Sure, like I'm going to believe that. What do you think I am, stupid? My temper got the better of me. I'm starting to. The words were out before I could stop them, and Blossom gave me a swift clip upside the head. Good one, Laurie, she said. Now she's really going to believe you. Su-Lynn giggled, and we looked around us in surprise. Now I believe you, she said. Only you guys would act like that. The lizards would never think of it. And what makes you think we're lizards? I asked. Because I took out the first one that walked into camp, so next time it was a human that came in. Twice? I asked. How long ago? Almost a week? I thought about it, calculating the days I'd taken to get here, guesstimating the time Dave and I had spent underground. They got to you before they found me, I said. What happened? How about I get you lot under cover, Su-Lynn said. I don't know why they destroyed Dave and Blossom's camps and not mine, and I don't want to find out. So how about you get out of there? Sure, I agreed. Why don't you tell us where to go? She snickered at that, and some of the suspicions I'd had subsided. This would be easier if our communications This would be easier if our communicators were linked, she said, and the suspicions returned. What was it my computer voice guy had said about the communicators? That they'd locked them so we had to be within 2 feet of each other? Lizards locked them, I said, and waited. I can fix that, Su-Lynn's voice said, and my suspicions were confirmed. I glanced over at David and Blossom and saw the start of what I was feeling on their faces. Nudging Blossom in the ribs, I looked up at the camera. Why don't you tell us where to go? Sure, Su-Lynn's voice said. Just head into the pod and hit the buzzer on the floor panel. No probs, I said, and turned to Dave and Bloss. Come on, you two. I had no choice but to hope they'd follow my lead. I turned back toward the pod, and then, instead of ordering it open again, I turned suddenly to the left and sprinted around it and into the bushes behind it. It was a huge relief not to hear any surprised shouts from behind me. The other two had gotten it. We ran into the bushes and kept running, dodging trees and thickets until we came to a clump of boulders. Look! Dave shouted and tapped me on the shoulder. He pointed toward the top of the rocks, and I caught sight of some vaguely familiar foliage. Come on, he called, and scrambled up the rocks and disappeared into the bushes. I heard the leaves rustle and then his triumphant shout, Yes! Hurry up, you two! I didn't bother arguing. I didn't know exactly what was wrong with Su-Lynn's camp or where Su-Lynn really was, but I was pretty sure that not following her instructions was going to have consequences. I followed Dave, and Blossom scrambled after me. It didn't take very long to see what he was so excited about. He realized the bushes were exactly like the ones growing near his camp, and those ones had concealed a hole in the ground that led to a cavern complex. Maybe these ones did too. I dropped into it and hoped for the best. It didn't take me long to realize Dave had been almost right. The hole did lead to a cave, but only a single cave and not a cavern system. And that wasn't all. Someone else had found the cave before us. I caught sight of Dave's crumpled form and ducked, just as a lump of wood cleaved the space my head had been. Hey! I shouted. Hey, Su-Lynn, that'd better be you, just saying. I kept moving even as I talked. I didn't want Blossom to land on me when she came through, and I didn't want her to sit up there on the surface waiting for me to clear the way. There was no telling what sort of trap the Heritage had set, or what they'd do when they realized we hadn't walked right into it. I half expected to see the wood coming for my face again, but it didn't. Laurie? For a girl with a hulking great log in her hands, Su-Lynn sounded a lot more fragile than she should. Laurie? I kept moving in a direction I hoped would take me out of wood swinging range, and then I looked toward the voice. Sue? I asked, and then realized the cavern wasn't as dark as a cave should be. Wow, you're really set up in here. Laurie! She shouted, and she dropped the wood to the floor and flung herself toward me. I caught her, surprised when she wrapped her arms around me and hugged me so tightly I almost couldn't breathe. I hugged her very cautiously back, watching as Blossom dropped into the cave. Su-Lynn? She asked, and then caught sight of David. Dave! Dave? Su-Lynn let go of me and looked around the cave. Dave! She shrieked when she saw him. Oh, I hit him! I hit him as hard as I could! Oh my God, what did I do? You hit him as hard as you could? I asked, feeling panic start to rise as I remembered the size of the lump of wood she'd been waving around. Well, yeah, I thought you might be them. Them? I decided I'd ask her about that later, but right now I had to see what could be done for Dave. I hadn't been kidding when I'd said she was really well set up in here. In fact, most of the pod seemed to be here, including what looked like a first aid kit. Man, I sure hope she hadn't broken anything important. Like his skull. He was probably going to be concussed. I didn't know what to do about concussion. I grabbed the first aid kit and tossed it to Blossom, who'd put Dave into some kind of recovery position. Well, at least that meant he was breathing. The more I looked, the more I saw. Su-Lynn had not only managed to get the first aid kit down here, but the bedstand from inside the pod, and the computer screen with what looked like the box containing the computer nearby. A few of the other gadgets were also arrayed around the cavern. We have to get him into the med box, Su-Lynn said after she'd finished helping Blossom. Can you open it up, Laurie? The what? The med box. What do you mean, med box? It's the thing under the bed. You just have to pull the drawer out. She pushed herself to her feet and hurried over to the bed. Oh, seriously, let me. I let her. It wasn't like she didn't have a lot of explaining to do or anything. This would be just one more thing. I just stood to one side with my hands on my hips while Sue and Blossom wrangled Dave's unconscious figure into the box and closed it after him. Right, I said, looking pointedly at Su-Lynn when they were done. You'd better start telling us what's going on.